So yes, my name is James, and I work for Microsoft, so I'm I think your second Microsoft speaker, but probably not the last. And in this session, I'm going to talk about how we can meet the challenges of the hybrid world with transformational end-user computing. So before I begin, just a bit about my role. So I'm our Next-Gen Windows Experiences Lead, and I essentially work with our UK partners to help them build out solutions and offers for their customers all around technology such as Windows 365, Windows 11, and Microsoft Intune. So it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with you all today. So what am I going to cover? So I'm going to land some of the insights that we've seen initially around our recent annual Work Trend Index study that we published in September. And this study surveyed around 20,000 individuals across 11 countries, and we asked them to share their insights on this sort of new era of hybrid working that we're all in at the moment. So very recent insights and statistics there. And then I'll move into how we must evolve our endpoint strategy to meet the needs of this hybrid working world that we're in. And of course, what is this Microsoft North Star vision for endpoint strategy? And then I won't let you walk away empty-handed. I'll give you sort of a couple of action points to go away with around how you can start this journey to this modernized sort of endpoint vision. So, what are we seeing? So essentially, we're seeing the things that matter to the workforce at the moment. So essentially, employees have this new worth it equation. So think about it like, is it worth me coming into the office? Is it worth me attending this meeting in person? And these are the sort of things that employees are asking themselves now, and you may find yourselves asking yourselves those questions as well when you're asked to do specific things these days. And managers feel wedged between leadership and these employee expectations when it comes to flexible and hybrid working. And of course, leaders need to make the office worth the commute. And that's something we're particularly seeing in Microsoft at the moment, particularly around where we've scaled back our UK HQ from 5 buildings to 3 buildings, and we're still finding those 3 buildings pretty quiet at the moment as well. So it's a challenge that we're facing as well. Flexible work doesn't have to mean always on. Certainly feel that myself now. When we're working flexibly, we end up working more hours and squeezing more meetings into our days. And rebuilding social capital really looks different in a hybrid world. So finding those reasons to come into the office is very different now. So it's clear how, where, and when of work is changing, but so is the why. So we can't underestimate the changes every worker has undergone in this pandemic. So the impact on the psyche and rethinking the role work plays in their lives. So employees who went home in 2020, essentially they're not the same as those coming back into the office now in 2022. And what we see in the data that 53% are more likely to prioritize health and well-being over work than before the pandemic. Don't know if any of you resonate with that as well. 18% quit their job in the past year, and 52% of Gen Z and millennials are considering quitting in the next year as well. Give you some ideas around why, some of the top reasons why they're quitting. I don't know whether anyone could guess. Mental health, number 1. Work-life balance, up there as well. The risk of COVID, there as well. And then lack of confidence in leaders, up there as well. And probably one of the important ones, lack of flexibility as well. So these are some of the things that those folks are thinking about when it comes to their role at the moment. But hybrid work is just work, right? It's just work. But are we doing it wrong? For this to work, we've got to end this productivity paranoia. And whenever I use those 2 words, Elon Musk sort of comes to mind with his recent announcements around the Twitter workers, that they must be in the office. Leaders also need to embrace the fact that people come in for each other to experience that social interaction and connection. And we also need to think about how we re-recruit our employees. And in context to this session, that end user experience is key to that. So people are working more than ever as leaders worry that they're not getting the job done. So the vast majority of employees that we surveyed, 87%, report that they are productive at work. We tried to ask the 13% for a comment, but we can't seem to find them anymore. I got a small laugh, that was good, thank you. Appreciate that. But we're also seeing productivity signals across M365 continue to climb. So really that backs up that data. But at the same time, only 12% of leaders say that they have full confidence that their team is productive. And with macroeconomic signs that productivity could be slowing, some organizations have resorted to invasive tracking systems that essentially breed this mistrust and inspire the sort of productivity theater that leads to actual wasted time rather than productive time. I don't know if anyone's seen those devices where you can put your mouse on this device and it actually moves your mouse around for you to pretend that you're productive at home. It's just created that there is a market for these types of devices, and that fuels that productivity paranoia. But it also risks making hybrid work unsustainable. And the answer isn't telling employees they need to focus or be more efficient. Leaders urgently need to pivot from worrying whether their people are actually working enough to helping them really focus on the work that's most important. And the return to the office has really been this sort of tug-of-war at many organizations, and I've sort of discussed the challenges that we faced at Microsoft. But we've even seen more employees roll back their plans after strident sort of one-size-fits-all policies that led to this employee outcry, so trying to drag people back into the office. And earlier this year, we advised leaders that they needed to make the commute worth it. And our data showed that half of hybrid employees were considering this sort of shift to fully remote work in the year ahead. So policy alone doesn't reverse this reality that we're in. So 70% of employees and 78% of those business decision makers say they need a better reason to go in than just company expectations. So the data reveals a better way to bring people back together and in a way that engages and energizes rather than just alienating them. So connecting with colleagues is a key motivation for working in person. 84% of employees would be motivated by the promise of socializing with their coworkers, while 85% are motivated by rebuilding those team bonds. And we had a lot of folks join teams during the pandemic that actually didn't see any of their colleagues face-to-face for such a long time. But employees also report that they would go to the office more frequently if they knew that their direct team members would be there and if their work friends were there. So the data is telling us that social connection is worth the commute. And final piece on this, so 84% of employees would be motivated by the promise of socializing with their co-workers, while 85% are motivated by rebuilding team bonds. So again, just reiterates it's all about that social connection when it comes to working back in the office. But what does this tell us? So the workforce is essentially sort of still in this transition phase, and many hybrid employees are considering this sort of switch to remote. When I say hybrid, I mean those that work in the office and out of the office. While even more remote employees are considering this sort of switch to hybrid in the year ahead. So people just want, we always like the grass is greener always on the other side of the fence, right? And these trends are what is defining the endpoint strategy. So we need to deploy and manage machines remotely, any place, anytime, anywhere, to enable this sort of geographic diversity or support workers that have moved away from the office since the pandemic. And we need to ensure that we're providing the best possible user experience to retain and attract talent as well. And of course, security is always paramount. But essentially, I like to say it, the sort of PC has now become the new workplace, right? It's central to how an employee gets their work done. And the key components of what that experience needs to consider are productivity, collaboration, security, reliability, and have to make it personal as well, so be able to personalize it for their own personal needs. Because ultimately, we want the employee to return to that device. Everything around employees' roles now is the device. Everything is device-centric. So we need to ensure that experience is a good experience. Because a happy worker is a productive worker, of course. But when it comes to personas, so one size doesn't fit all, and it shouldn't have to, right? So not if you want to empower people to do and feel their best. We need to cater for how people want to work and where they want to work, whether that's in the office, at home, or a hybrid of both. And when we look at this from a persona perspective in more detail, we see information workers are evolving. We continue to see traditional information workers that use traditional desktops with familiar applications and familiar services. But there's also this new category of information workers emerging, what we call the cloud information workers, who are like traditional knowledge workers, but spend most of the time on cloud-based apps and services and not on traditional desktop applications. Frontline workers continue to be the backbone of hybrid operations for all major industries, and we see specific needs for different user personas within this category. So highly mobile users, so working in the field, retail, and shop floors. So these frontline workers really rely on mobile and tablet devices to provide services to their customers and guests. And both frontline workers and IT are looking for this sort of lightweight and simple computing solutions. So these are solutions that don't need a lot of training to use and have this sort of familiar and consistent experiences and are easy to deploy and easy to manage. And in some cases, though, frontline workers are still looking for that flexibility and power to leverage a richer set of apps and specialized devices. Typically, we see this in healthcare, where devices and apps need to be both powerful and secure. And then finally on this, we're also seeing this emergence in the temporary and elastic workforces. And these are often seasonal or contract-based workers that have these sort of rich computing needs that will rapidly scale up and scale down based on the work that needs to be done in an organization. There you go. So to meet these needs, get to the meat of the stuff now, we need to adopt a modern approach to EUC. And this approach needs to adapt to the modern world by enabling hybrid working to ensure we future-proof the endpoint estate. It provides the best possible experience for everyone that doesn't restrict collaboration, productivity, and creativity. And we want to empower IT to move away from manual, time-consuming tasks to be able to be more strategic. And of course, ensure we provide an experience that's always up to date, secure, and compliant. So what are some of the key benefits to adopting this approach? So from a user perspective, we see a massive reduction in boot times, so average less than 30 seconds to a functioning or responsive desktop, we say. And that's a very typical experience for many of us on a modern desktop. A reduction in crashes, and of course an increase in battery life as well. And then from an IT perspective, we see a massive reduction in help desk calls related to devices, device performance, and device stability. A massive reduction in setup times when we adopt things like autopilot and the modern application stack. And that results in a 50% increase in FTE hours reclaimed from sort of maintaining that legacy infrastructure. From a leadership perspective, we get better employee engagement, we get better employee impact, and we get better employee effectiveness. And what does that do? That improves employee sentiment. So employees are happier where they're working, and ultimately that improves our Net Promoter Score as well. So employees are scoring that business higher and they want to work there. So although there are different needs at play, there are common themes that could be drawn across an increasingly complex and growing need base. So we like to call it these 5 common components of end-user compute that drive the user experience. So first of all, users need a device that allows them to get work done. And this can be like mobile devices, tablets, 2-in-1 endpoints, traditional desktops and laptops. Second, each of these devices needs to run an OS, and IT organizations need to keep this OS sort of easy to manage and keep it up to date, keeping everything secure, while users need it to be consistent and easy to use. And next, IT organizations need a unified cloud-based management solution across all devices and all operating systems. Mobile devices and tablets, traditional desktops, laptops, virtual endpoints like cloud PCs, and personal devices need to be covered. And the device, operating system, and management solution need to reinforce security on the endpoint, protecting organization, its users and customers, as well as sensitive data, all without disrupting productivity. And lastly, every user needs rich collaborative apps that work consistently across all devices and all worker types. So where does this journey start, I hear you ask? So the main idea is essentially to move away from traditional approaches and shift to modern approaches. So everything you see on your screen there that's in the blue box. So move away from manual deployment by imaging devices with custom images that we spend time developing and maintaining. Move away from using legacy group policies, packaging and deploying apps in Config Manager, using traditional Active Directory join or even hybrid join as well, and managing and securing physical perimeter networks and having multiple security agents all running on the desktop. And ideally moving to zero-touch deployment with things like Windows Autopilot, with native Azure Active Directory join, moving those apps from Config Manager to Intune, nice and simple, I hear you say, and therefore have sort of cloud deployed and cloud managed devices with Microsoft Intune. So we start with a device, and this device can be a physical and or virtual device, not necessarily a Surface device, which are very good, by the way. But we have great modern offerings from our OEM partners, Dell, HP, Lenovo, great devices out there, providing these across a wide range of form factors to support various sort of personas, all offering zero-touch deployment options out of the box, and then also providing modern ways to interact via touch, via pen, via ink, via voice. We also have Pluton chips on the horizon as well, where essentially the TPM would be on that CPU itself for additional security at the hardware layer. And also from a virtual device perspective as well, we have options. I know AVD was talked about earlier, but customers can choose between AVD and Windows 365. With Windows, Windows 365 being the future direction of Windows, recently something we announced, so providing this simplicity through fixed user per month costs across a variety of SKUs, presenting performance options to meet different user needs. And with Windows 365, we're providing personal desktops, all delivered through a simple SaaS model, coming fully integrated with Microsoft Intune for simplicity. Whilst AVD, catering for those more complex VDI scenarios with the flexibility of consumption costs and multi-session and remote app features, but essentially we are streaming desktops from Azure, providing rapid deployment at scale, highly secure with everything in the cloud, available on any internet-connected device, providing business continuity, and mobilizing desktop users. And this supports scenarios such as frontline workers, temp workers, and geographically diverse staff. And for those unfamiliar with Windows 365, I'll just talk about that for a second. So Windows 365 brings this new cloud PC, sort of hybrid personal computing category to life. So using the power of the cloud and the capabilities of the device to provide a full personalized Windows experience. And really, we sort of time this as organizations around the world sort of grapple with this best way to facilitate hybrid work models where employees can be both on-site and distributed across the globe. And this experience is sort of versatile, familiar, and productive by delivering users their personalized content, settings, and applications. We've made it simple to deploy and manage from a single console and easy for anyone to use. Secure by design, so leaving no data on the device when appropriately configured by admin, of course. Available on any device and optimized for that best experience on a Windows PC. And all at a predictable per user per month price. And of course, it's scalable and resilient to support changing workforce needs and new business needs as well. In terms of some of the scenarios we see, so data security, disaster recovery, high-capacity compute needs and temporary workforces, bring your own PC scenarios, and mergers and acquisitions are quite popular as well, providing that short-term compute for new users onboarding to an organization. And a few takeaways there. I would say my main takeaway that comes up all the time is AVD is cheaper. In the multi-session scenario, right, AVD is cheaper. But when you compare it to personal desktops, whether they're persistent, non-persistent, Windows 365 is cheaper. You can use the Nerdio calculator if you don't trust Microsoft or my words, but essentially compare a similar specs VM and a Windows 365 SKU, and for single sessions, personal desktops, and Windows 365 is the cheaper option. So for those types of scenarios where a personal desktop is required, think about Windows 365, just due to the simplicity and speed at which you can deploy it. Before I lose my voice. So, also Windows 365, we are slowly converging that end-user experience. So with Windows 11, so things on the horizon, Windows 365 boot, so allowing you to boot directly to a cloud PC from that Windows 11 device. Not here yet, coming. Same with Windows 365 switch, that's coming as well. So providing that desktop switch capability, so easily to switch from your device experience to the cloud PC experience, all with the click of a button. Windows 365 app is here, so that's the first step on that journey, and that provides that direct path to Windows 365 from the taskbar with a personal customized experience that can be tailored to each individual, so that can be brought into a conditional access policy to provide that front-end security. And eventually where we want to end up with Windows 365 is this offline capability, right? That's the nirvana for us. I think when that makes it, that's really going to change everything. So essentially being able to work on your Windows 365 cloud PC when you're disconnected from the internet, and then having that sync back up when you reconnect online. That's the dream that we're heading towards. But back on our journey, so from an OS perspective, looking at Windows 10 and Windows 11, and with our recent H2 release landed, we landed some new security features with Windows 11 around additional phishing attack prevention. So when users are prompted for those sort of SaaS app credentials, Windows 11 will now check the redirection URL to confirm that it's going to the expected destination. And this is leveraging our security cloud intelligence that already powers things like Smart Screen. Windows 11 also enables these hardware-based security features that will be switched on out of the box for new hardware, so things like credential guards. And in terms of worrying about managing that estate, that mixed estate, we've really designed Windows 11 in the same way off the back of Windows 10, so really providing that coexistence, being able to leverage the same management and deployment tools that you use with Windows 10. I just want to touch on endpoint analytics as well. So in endpoint analytics, there is a readiness report, so you can understand what your Windows 11 compatibility is across your existing devices. In addition to that, you can also leverage endpoint analytics to have specific insights on cloud PCs for those users using Windows 365. So you can ensure that users being assigned the correct performance SKU by seeing CPU and RAM utilization, things like latency and round-trip time data as well. From a full estate perspective, we can see the impact of legacy GPOs or login scripts that delay that time for the user to get to a responsive desktop. We can also be proactive, right? We can deploy remediation scripts to prevent issues before they even happen. And we can identify versions of apps causing crashes and target them for updates. And then from a servicing perspective, I'm just going to touch on auto patch very, very quickly. So we recently released Windows Auto Patch. What is the difference between Windows Auto Patch and Windows Update for Business? So essentially, Windows Auto Patch uses Windows Update for Business to manage updates on your behalf, right? And because we specialize in updates and do so many of them all the time, you'll get the benefits of our learnings as we encounter and resolve issues. And this helps sort of keep issues from ever occurring. So in terms of the bottom line on Windows Autopatch, your endpoints stay up to date, so you're more secure and productive. Free up valuable time by not having to create those servicing rings that are required when you think about that Windows update strategy. Windows Autopatch does it all for you. We'll put machines in those rings as well, but also give you the ability to customize as well. So you don't really want your VIPs in the fast ring getting updates straight away. You probably want to push them to the back of the queue. But that just allows us, Microsoft, to work on the updates, and we'll pause them when we see issues. So I'm seeing a wrap it up sign, is that? So when it comes to the management piece, it's important we understand the right path to modern management. And I'll just close on this piece. So for customers with limited or no existing management tools, straight to the cloud, straight to Intune. If you've got existing cloud management, just start adding more, enroll more endpoints and more workloads to cloud management. If you're primarily on-prem with some cloud, consider co-management as that first step and start moving workloads over to Intune. And then if you've got significant on-prem presence, then consider the simplest and lowest risk option, which is connecting that config manager instance, that's the word, to Intune for what we call tenant attached. Then you can start leveraging things like endpoint analytics on your on-prem devices. So I'm just going to wrap up. So what do we need to do first? So currently, you should evaluate current devices for compatibility with Windows 11 and start to plan that hardware refresh. And where you can, upgrade PCs to Windows 11 using Windows Update for Business. And consider Windows 11 an update rather than an upgrade. We have designed it in that way. Unlock zero-touch deployment with Microsoft Intune. I nearly said Endpoint Manager, but we changed that word a few months ago. Endpoint Analytics and Windows Autopilot for that zero-touch deployment. And then from a security perspective, embrace zero trust and prevent security issues with secure PCs, our cloud config, and leverage Defender for endpoints. And then from an apps perspective, collaboration with Teams, Office, and your Windows apps. And we sort of try and guarantee that application compatibility from 10 to 11 as well. And on that note, thank you very much for your attention. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, James.